My name is Dr. Jane Pererara and I'm a consultant psychiatrist, and I'm here to talk to you about the role of medication in depression. So I'm a medical doctor and worked several years in medicine before I trained in psychiatry, and I've now been in psychiatry 24 years. And what I want to say is the longer I've stayed in the business, I've come to realize that there's a lot that each and every one of us can do to help ourselves feel better. And that is why I'm so pleased to be involved with Hope in Depression and giving this talk today, because it's all about you understanding your condition so that you have the tools to help yourself. And I want to start off by saying it isn't anyone's fault. It's one of those things that happens either because of the chemical imbalance in your brain or by the impact of stress on your brain. So let's start off with depression. It's a term that's bandied about quite a bit. Depression is used as a descriptive word, and that can be many things, but real depression is an illness, a biological illness. And over your and my lifetime, each of us will have a 20% chance of suffering with it. Women are twice as likely to be depressed, and this is interesting. Possibly is because women talk more about it. It might be that we carry a lot of stress in our lives because of all the different roles we face. But it is an interesting and important fact. You know, one would question, do men talk enough about their problems? So you must have seen in the news and in the media several famous people coming out talking about their experience of depression, which is very great to hear. You know, we've got Lenny Henry, we've got Trisha Goddard, we've got Catherine Zeta-Jones, Winston Churchill, Amy Winehouse, Jamie Oliver. So we're looking at a cross-section of very intelligent, talented, rich people who have all battled in different ways with their depression. So, you know, depression can affect anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, you know, what your background is, how educated or not you are, it doesn't really matter. It can affect any and everyone. We also know that in depression, there are several neurochemicals that are not in balance. The commonly spoken ones are serotonin, or 5-HT, noradrenaline, dopamine, GABA, and glutamate. Most of our medications that we use today are directed at improving these neurochemicals in our brain. There's an interesting slide showing the brain scan of a person who is depressed and a person who is not depressed. And what you will actually see is that certain parts of the brain shrink in depression, and I will come on to that shortly. The blood flow to certain parts of the brain is reduced in depression. So when we do a functional image or a scan, the parts of the brain that would normally light up in a normal functioning person do not light up in depression. And that's quite stark in telling us that depression is a physical illness. We're also learning that there's a big link between your body and your brain. For example, the serotonin I was speaking about is not just produced in the brain, that chemical, it's also produced in the gut. We know that the brain and the gut are linked by the vagus nerve. We know that when you are depressed, you can have symptoms in your gut. And we know that people who have gut problems often suffer with anxiety and depression. So there is a link between our body and our brain, a very strong link. That's a good thing, because if we know this, we can do things to strengthen our body that will strengthen our brain. So I want you to hold on to that. We know that thinking negatively doesn't help our immune status. It doesn't help the way our body responds to things. Certainly it doesn't help the way our brain copes with things. So positive thinking is a very important aspect of recovery in any condition, whether it is a physical condition or a mental health condition. I know in one of your sessions you're going to be talking about psychological therapies, and that will go into great detail about the power of positive thinking. I want to tell you about another growth factor that I think is very, very important. By you taking charge of your life and doing positive things, you can actually enhance this growth factor in the brain. It's called brain-derived neurotropic factor. And studies have shown that when you're depressed, your BDNF levels are low. We know that stress reduces it. We know that inflammation reduces it. And we know that in severely depressed people, BDNF levels are low. Now, what's interesting is when people start to be treated with antidepressants or any other modality of treatment, BDNF levels rise in the brain. We also know that exercise and doing positive things like meeting a friend who makes you happy increases BDNF levels. So that's really useful to know because it's something you can do. It doesn't cost anything. Yet by putting in positive action in your life, you can actually nurture your brain to help it grow. So who treats depression? The first person you should be going to is your general practitioner. They are medically trained doctors, and these days in their training, they have to do so many terms in psychiatry so they can understand common mental health problems. So your GP will be your first port of call. If the GP thinks your depression is mild to moderate, the GP will offer you exercise, might refer you to a counsellor. There are very good counselling services at primary care level. If the GP is concerned because he has tried to treat you and you know better, he will refer you to a psychiatrist. Now, a psychiatrist is someone like me, who's a trained doctor, who is trained in mental health. So we will diagnose and we will treat, and often we use stronger, bigger doses of medication to get you well. If your depression impacts on your day-to-day functioning that you really need support to even get out of bed and go out in the community, you might be offered the support of a mental health nurse or a mental health social worker or a mental health practitioner who will allow you to do these things. And then obviously there are the psychologists and the psychotherapists. These are people who provide talking therapies to help you strengthen your mind and recover from your depression.